It's being dubbed the Big Internet Censorship Bill. Bill C-10 is the Trudeau government's attempt to alter internet regulation in Canada. But could it lead to your social media posts facing the regulation of government agents? Hi, I'm Brian Lilly, political columnist with the Toronto Sun, and here to talk more about this with me now is Conservative MP Rachael Harder, who is the MP for Lethbridge, Alberta. And Rachael, good to have you on. Nice to see you again. I hope you're keeping well in these COVID times.
Thank you, Brian. It's so nice to be here. And yes, my family and I are keeping very well. Thank you.
We're all dealing more and more online during COVID lockdowns or restrictions or curfews, depending on where you are. And while I understand the government feels it needs to update legislation surrounding certain parts of how the internet's regulated, I didn't expect them to go this far. Tell me your main concerns. I think the one that gets a lot of people is the thought that their personal social media posts might be policed by the government. Is that for real, or is that, an exaggeration?
No, Brian, I wish it was an exaggeration, but it's not. The government put forward this legislation, Bill C-10. Originally, it did not go as far as it does now. And the reason for that is because just last week in committee, when there was, a clause by clause review being done on the bill, there was a specific clause that was removed. And that clause protected individual content generators. So you and me. Or Sally, who posts a video about her kids dancing or her cat, doing a special trick. Those individuals were protected. Once that clause got removed, however, those individuals are no longer protected and now are subject to the protocols or the policies, I should say, that are implemented by the CRTC. Okay,
so I'll ask about those policies in a minute, but how did it get removed at committee? I mean, that's odd. The Liberals don't have a majority. Did one of the other opposition parties, I'm assuming not the Conservatives, support removing that clause? What prompted that?
Yeah, so it happened very quickly. What it ended up happening was there was a Liberal member of Parliament who put forward the request to remove the clause. And rather than it being a roll call vote or a recorded vote, as we call it at committee, it was on division. And so it passed very quickly. That said, it would be our practice as members of Parliament in the Conservative Party to vote down any portion of a bad bill. And this was simply exactly that, a bad bill.
So, I'm sure cat videos are likely not to face the internet police. What would be police? Like, the CRTC is going to regulate my videos that I post onto YouTube through the Toronto Sun. They're going to regulate that as broadcast content?
Well, at committee, there was a government official who is an expert in this area, and he was asked to comment with regard to what it would mean if that clause was removed. And he did say that any programming that was uploaded to a platform such as TikTok or YouTube or Facebook would be subject to regulation moving forward. So, Brian, as much as we want to think that it wouldn't be the cat video that our grandma would post or maybe a friend would post, it is, in fact, those things that could potentially be regulated should the CRTC wish to intrude.
As someone that has worked in broadcasting for most of his career in radio and television, the CRTC, when it decides to, can be a very heavy hand in deciding what can and can't be done, what can and can't be said, how it can be said. I was about to say I'm not sure. I know for sure that I do not want them regulating my content on this platform or any other online. I thought that we believed in freedom of expression in this country. Aren't the Liberals always saying that they're the party of the charter? I mean, they throw it back in your face all the time when I watch Question Period.
Yeah, Brian, and thank you for bringing that up, because look, I think at the end of the day, this really, in my mind and according to a number of other experts that I'm listening to on this topic, including academics who are writing on it, this comes down to control. This comes down to censorship. This comes down to potentially a constitutional challenge is what this will result in. Our Section 2B of the Constitution protects us and our ability to speak freely. And this legislation, Bill C-10, could now go after us for doing exactly that, speaking freely. Ultimately, this is an opportunity for Trudeau to squelch anything that goes against his liberal ideology. It's wrong.
It truly is amazing that that is going on. Michael Geist is a professor at the University of Ottawa, law professor. He deals a lot in this realm within internet regulation, censorship. He's very critical of this bill. He was no stranger to criticizing the Conservatives when they were in power. That's his job, looking at the legislation and being critical
For
of it.
sure.
I've never seen him be so critical of a bill as he is on this one. And beyond the regulating, our personal videos or even videos like making the Toronto Sun videos subject to CRTC laws, the same as anything on regular TV, he raises issues around what he calls the Great Canadian Internet Firewall, that the government wants to be able to block content that it doesn't think should be allowed into Canada from the internet. There's a country that does that. It's called China, and people cannot see regular content that the rest of us do, that the rest of the free world gets to see and share. They will censor out news stories that make them look bad. The government wants the ability to do that, but also if we post something within Canada, a takedown order within 24 hours and no appeal. So they decide that what you said is offensive. Well, it could be true, but if it's if it's offensive, the government says take it down. That's an extraordinary power to hand over to a political machine.
Yeah, Brian, you raised some good points, and one that I would also raise to complement the things that you've already said is, look, we know that there are already laws in place that protect us against such things as libel or slander or promoting hate. Those things are already covered off in the criminal code. So what we have here then is the government is actually going a step too far. We don't need more legislation. We just need the legislation that we already have properly enforced. If that were to be done, then Canadians would rightly be protected. This bill, however, that the Liberals have put on the table, again, I would say imposes restrictions on our freedom and our ability to post the videos that we want to post and say the things that we want to say. And I would say this, I would also say that the Minister of Heritage has made it really clear that he intends to bring further legislation with regard to what he's calling hate speech and making sure that only certain things are posted on social media. He's also indicated that he's calling for a review with regards to apps and how they are used and regulated. So I think we're going down a very, very scary path here in terms of Canadians' freedoms.
The definition of hate speech can be very fluid, depending on who's doing the definitions. As the Jesuits would say, define your terms. If you're going to have a discussion,
Exactly.
define your terms. I unfortunately have heard this government use terms such as hate speech interchangeably with hurtful speech or harmful speech. Okay, well, take the pandemic as an example. There's a big push to say only get your information from official government sources. Well, if someone was at all the news conferences at the beginning, we were told not to wear masks, that it couldn't be spread human to human. There was all kinds of information that wasn't true that was being put out by official government sources. And it was people in the media, doctors and others saying, hold on a minute, here's new information that got things to change. We could face a situation where the government is deciding, no, we don't want this information out, on whatever topic, and they're going to have the power to shut it down. That truly frightens me. The Conservatives will vote against it. Have you heard from the Bloc or the NDP on any of this, though?
Yeah, Brian. We haven't heard what the NDP or the Bloc intend to do with this piece of legislation, but just to comment quickly on what you said before, we also know that the legislation that's due to come in the next few weeks from the Heritage Minister, which will expand on Bill C-10, it's speculated that this legislation will actually give government the authority to take down online content that is offensive or harmful, and to do so within 24 hours. Now, that should be disconcerting, because who is to decide whether or not it's offensive? Offensive to whom? The color of coat you decide to wear in the morning could be offensive to one individual. The color of your hair, the color of your skin.
There's lots of people don't like gingers.
Totally. Or blondes. I mean, we are persecuted with joke after joke. But nevertheless, So who defines these things, Brian? You're raising a very good point. Who defines these things?
All right. Well, keep us up to date on what happens with this legislation and keep up the good fight in the House of Commons. Rachael Harder, Conservative MP for Lethbridge. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. You let us know what you have to say on this. Leave a comment below while you still can. Tweet this video out. Share it on Facebook. Email it to your Aunt May in Whitby. Let's get the word out on this.